All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Jasper. I'm the assistant manager here at McNally Robinson Booksellers in Saskatoon. This event is being held on Treaty 6 territory. This is the land of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota, and homeland of the Métis Nation. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Saskatoon launch of March 4th by Dale Botting, Richard Jankowski, and Alan Wallace, and published by Benchmark Press. Just to note that this event is being live streamed, so we've got a web camera up to your right here. I'd also like to take this moment to remind you all to silence or turn off your phones. If it rings, the web camera will pick it up. It'll live on the internet forever. It'll be very embarrassing. If you'd like to buy copies of March 4th, we have some up here on the signing table. We also have some on the desk by where you first walked in. And you're welcome to get it signed before you purchase it. We just ask that you please do remember to stop by the cash desk on your way out. And our host for this evening will be Pat Rediger from Benchmark Press. I'll now hand the mic over to him to get things started. Everyone, please give him a very warm welcome. Quite a bit of yeah. That should be good. We'll find out.
Right. Well, thanks everybody for coming tonight. This is going to be an interesting night with three wise men going to share their experiences and thoughts on the different topics tonight. So I'm glad everyone could make it and kind of participate in the discussion. I guess I go back with probably Dale the furthest, probably about 30 years or so when he was the CEO of STEP, and we did a lot of stuff with international trade. So I got to know Dale, and I guess we've, people kind of come in and out of your lives in different times, and Dale's kind of come in and out of mine in different times, and so we've kind of come full circle, and we're doing another book launch with Dale. We did one a couple of months ago, and this is the second one we're doing here at McNally, and good to see another great turnout. I've also done some work with Richard over the years, so in the real estate, a little bit of marketing projects and whatnot, and kind of just a small world how we all kind of meet each other, and it's been great to meet Alan in this project. I didn't know Alan before, but these guys have been great to work with, and they've got a lot of insights and experiences to share. Now, I guess we had some discussions about like, are they experienced or seasoned or what we should actually refer to them, but I think we decided on seasoned. They're kind of salty, I guess, so they're seasoned. So I guess when we're looking at that, what they wanted to talk about tonight, when you get up in the morning, you turn on the radio, you hear something different happening in the world, something more challenging, whether it's war in the Middle East or war in Ukraine or Canada's lack of productivity, getting skilled youth into the workplace. There's lots of issues that are going on in society today, and there seems to be more kind of problems and solutions. And I think some of the solutions that do come or talked about don't really emanate from Saskatchewan. You might read articles in the Globe and Mail and National Post, but they may not always resonate here in Saskatchewan. So I think it's great that we got three guys that have sat down and kind of take a look at some of these issues. Now, I don't know whether they've got all the solutions or not, but they've got some that they want to share tonight. And I think it's important not even just to kind of bring forth their ideas and whatnot, but have a discussion on these important issues that are going on in society today. And I think that was one of the reasons why they wanted to share their ideas is, I think we're long overdue for heartfelt discussion on these issues and where do we want to head as a society going forward. So I think they've got some good ideas, and they're going to, I guess, March 4th tonight on their ideas. So I'll invite, I guess, whoever wants to go first, can you go first?
Yeah.
They'll never shy about going first.
Thanks, Pat.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pat. For the record, Pat, it's an alphabetical order, so I'm, that's my excuse. you mentioned we know each other for 30 plus years. All fair warning to those of you who know me now and haven't met me yet. Once you get to know me, I can't get out of your life. I'm going to be like a virus. I'm going to hang around. So that happens when you get to know me. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start with a quick bit of history and kind of set the stage for the overall outline of our book. And then Richard will, again, alphabetical, J for Jankowski and W for Wallace. So there we go. So let's start with that history. Can you remember where you were exactly 1 year ago today? Can you remember what you were thinking at that time? Rose and I, about a year ago from now, we're at our snowbird place at 25261 Berrybrook Drive, Sun Lakes, Arizona. And you can't have that for sale. We sold it already, but that's where we were. And I was down there angry and fuming at the stupidity and the recklessness of one Donald J. Trump when he first planned to hit Canada with his first round of tariffs. And it was on March 4th, 2025. Hence the play on words, the title of our book, which is spelled a little different without the U in the word fourth. Trump backed off, but later shook the whole world with his so-called Liberation Day of global tariffs in early April of last year. Luckily, so far, Canada has generally been shielded by the former CUSMA agreement, but the rhetoric of the Trump administration has been unrelenting in calling for Canada to be the 51st state and to eventually have the USA take over Canada by, quote, economic force. As we stand here in the spring of 2026, I continue to be both angry and concerned. Who knows what is going to be left of our economic shield, which has been, fortunately, up till now, the Canada-US-Mexico agreement, or CUSMA, but after it expires in July of this year, anything can happen. I think that's what makes this timely as well, even though we're a year later from when we started thinking about this. So as the subtitle says in our book, we are at a most critical time in our economic history. And that's why we wanted to write this. Before Trump even got elected, however, long before that, before his second term, I had other emotions besides anger, long before that. These were feelings of sadness, despondency, and frankly, some frustration. Before the October 2024 election in Saskatchewan, I had a mini reunion with one of my old friends, Alan Wallace, over at the coffee, we had coffee at the Night Oven Cafe on the west side, not far from where you used to work, Charles, right? You probably remember that. They moved there now. And we compared our lists of all the things that we felt was just slip sliding away in Saskatchewan. And it was really starting to annoy us. After that, I did some other writing, and I did an op-ed piece that maybe some of you might have seen in the daily newspapers in Saskatchewan back in January of 2025, before Trump's inauguration again. And that piece was entitled, Economic Development, for What Purpose? In that editorial, I expressed a kind of lament for my 50-year career trying to advance the economic development of Saskatchewan and Canada. And now I still was seeing so much unfinished business. I expressed despair at watching my economy languish for so long, fiscally, with less global competitiveness, socially, and with a stark lack of preparedness for all the environmental shocks that I just know was about to come. So the final spark then came with another mini reunion over lunch with Richard Jankowski. And Richard, I looked it up yesterday on my calendar, January 12th, 2025, Liberty Kitchen, Lawson Heights. How's that for precise? I keep records.
We didn't pay the tax.
Don't tell him. So we had a long chat, Richard and I, about his future work with Srita. Aaron's here in the audience. And then also we discussed ourselves the need to start speaking out more. So that synergy of Alan, Richard, and me, along with that annoying Mr. Trump, resulted in today's book launch. At first, my thought was let's compose one big policy paper and fire it off to all the old business groups that I used to work with so closely. But I was talked out of it, and I like the idea we went with instead, which was a series of sending weekly idea sets, and we use that term in the book, idea sets, to a list of 32 different business groups across Saskatchewan. Week after week, we bombarded them. They probably thought, who are these old farts, and why do they keep sending us stuff? But we did it anyway. And we want to light a few more fires and stimulate some urgent thinking and action. So we did that in the spring and summer of last year. And then after finishing that, we looked at each other and we said, hey, you know what? We actually have a book here. So that's how we got this thing going beyond the original communications. And so I called Pat Rediger, a dear old friend, as Pat mentioned, Benchmark Press. Pat did a great job in publishing my first book, which shamelessly you put out there for me. Good job. And it's a book on leadership. The book there is called Nobody from Nowhere, not a very catchy title, a story of leadership, resilience, and legacy. And it talks about real world experience in leadership and beyond theory, real practice, and what leadership truly is all about. So Pat had that experience. I was happy with it. And so here we are now with the second book this evening. So I'm just going to tee this up very quickly, and then I'm going to turn it over to my great colleagues that I'm so proud to be associated with. The thesis of March 4th is that Donald Trump has actually done Canada and Saskatchewan a favor. He has given us a huge and invaluable wake-up call. Regardless of all these brutal new global realities, we just had to, number one, wake up. Number two, put a stop to all our complacencies, and they were building. And number three, start renewing our province and our nation like never before. That was the wake-up call. So in our new book, this co-authored effort, we call for three things. And I'll give you a summary. We can't go into detail, but the summary is this. The three things we call for: one, a far greater sense of urgency, a far greater sense of urgency. And here we are a year later, and I still would like to see more urgency. We're entering an era of economic crisis and pending adversity that is simply too good to waste. Every year counts in a fight to sustain the prosperity of our kids and our grandkids. And speaking personally, I'm probably the oldest. I know I'm the oldest. I won't say probably. That's probably too cute. I know I'm the old codger of the bunch. And we're running out of time. And so as three old guys, we don't have much time left to see a better Canada and a better Saskatchewan. I want to see it while I'm still here. Secondly, we call for less timid and incremental changes and a need for bigger and bolder ideas. My favorite word is transformational. We want to see transformational change. This is the time. If not now, when? If not with our current leadership, then with who? We are at an inflection point in history, and this is a historic time for generational, once-in-a-lifetime change. This is it, folks. We are on the cusp, and I'm not a doom and gloomer. I just know where we have to be, both in the province and globally as a country. Our third call is for grassroots mobilization, grassroots. Not just for business, and this is a big part of our communication to business, not just for business to wait for government to do it all themselves, but for industry and sector groups to also step up to the plate as well, to mobilize within their own membership, within their own programming. And we talk quite a bit about that in the book. So by way of quick summation, and then I'll turn it over to the successive co-authors, March 4th is not a bitch list. It really isn't. We don't have a stream of criticism here. That's easy. We didn't do that. We wanted to make it constructive. We wanted to paint a far more optimistic picture of what we could still become as a province and as a country. We identified hundreds of positive ideas. I don't think that's hyperbole. I haven't counted them all, but I know there's more than 100 recommendations in here. We take what we think is constructive and respectful aim, because I know how tough it is to be in government. I used to be a deputy minister at all levels of government. But we have ideas. We have ideas for Canada. We have ideas for Saskatchewan. We have ideas for municipal governments and for more effective regions, all knowing how to work better together as well. We also call upon authentic partnerships. I say again, authentic partnerships with our Indigenous and First Nation treaty partners. We also talk about an elevated and properly devolved role for community-based organizations. We're all in this together, all hands on deck. So by way of summary, and then I'm going to stop, and you can ask me questions, all of us questions about the detailed content, but by way of summary, we have in the book 9 different chapter headings, and here's what they are. 1, accelerate and secure trade through more diversity and grassroots effort. 2, strategies for import replacement, alternative sourcing, and rapidly enhanced supplier development. 3, strategies and tactics for expedited permitting, and 21st century regulatory reform. Not the old command and control models. That's too slow and it's cumbersome. And frankly, it's not working. It's like walking through mud sometimes in this country. Number 4, strategic investing for economic abundance. Time to wake up and build the opportunities. 5, this is one near and dear, several of these are near and dear to my heart, but this one especially is the need for urgent tax reform, transformational tax reform for enhanced global competitiveness and fiscal stability. 6, the need to pay more attention to the 3 Ps. And admittedly, this isn't terribly literate, but the 3 Ps are productivity, productivity, productivity. Same P. But man, have we fallen behind, and we better get at it. Number 7 is modernizing municipal assessment and finance. Number 8 is investing strategically in human services and talent attraction. This is where the social and the economic come together. And number 9, in a similar sense of synergy and holism, is strategic investing in a world of rapid climate change. And we have no idea. I'm an old climatologist. One of my degrees is in physical geography. And I track this stuff. And we can talk about that if you want at the break. But we are going to see a lot in the next decade, maybe even the next few years, now that we're in an El Nino cycle as well. So there are many ideas expressed in all of those chapter headings. Could probably be a 2-hour workshop right there. You don't have time for us to do that, Jasper.
Unfortunately.
We don't get into that detail. We maybe later we can chat over it. I think we're going next door at Moxie's for some of you who want to stay. We have Q&A. I really look forward to Q&A where we can maybe have comment. You can pull stuff out of us in terms of all those hundreds of ideas. But most of all, buy the book, read the book. That would be important. I think that's where it's all in there. And when you do, by way of wrap up, go to the back. Because we spent a lot of time taking it all tightly. And the book's not that long anyway. That's, I think, one of its attractions, is we made it tight and punchy. But in the back, we have a series of appendices that I think tidy it up quite nicely. Appendix C is where we summarize ways to mobilize the grassroots advocacy and programming of local business groups. Appendix D is where we summarize our ideas for more urgent action by the Government of Canada. Appendix E is where we provide our urgent and more transformational to-do list for the provincial government and my old colleagues that I used to work with. Appendix F is where we summarize the long overdue actions required by municipal governments. And finally, we have our last appendix, Appendix G, which has an interesting title. It's called How Do You Eat an Elephant-Sized Agenda? Because it's a big agenda, right? So what we do is suggest a one bite at a time rollout on how to attain our ultimate vision in a series of methodical steps in chunks of years, 2027 to 2030, and during that critical decade that we see of the 2030s. So in conclusion, this is my summary for you to start this off in this launch of the when and the what that we did in the writing of this book. I'll soon turn it over to Richard in just a few seconds. Richard will amplify the underlying reasons behind the why of this combined effort, just to elaborate a bit more. And then Alan will finish off with these introductory remarks with a message on the power of giving all our friends and communities a message of hope. We want it to be hopeful, not critical, constructive and hopeful. With hope, you have a much stronger, a much more inspiring, and a more galvanizing vision of Canada and Saskatchewan. So that's my intro. Richard, over to you, and you can further amplify why the heck did we old guys do this? Seasoned guys, pardon me.
Yes, as a foodie, a foodaholic, I like seasoned better than angry. The 3 Ps, we're gonna have to change that as well, Dale, to patience, persistence, and professionalism for Pat. There's working with him was actually a pleasure. How's that for alliteration? It was a fun project. There's I gave people that I invited a card, and I think it goes something along the line of 100 years from now, the people that view us 100 years from now won't care about our bank account or the kind of car we drove or the size of our house that we lived in. What'll be important is that we made a difference in the life of a child. And really, so that is going to summarize the why from my perspective. Most of you that are here, we don't know each other's guests. There's some overlap, mostly for Dale, I would say, but my guests have come from out of town, and I'm really honored to have them here. But they're going to be from a personal context about the why, as Dale said. And I chose the context because the event this is a family and friends night. When we get into the business sessions, we'll start rolling up our sleeves and get a little bit more granular on the action side. And we all have a story. So we're all going to come from this a little bit of a different angle. And that was also the pleasure. Somebody asked me what it's like to write a book. It says pretty simple. It's sort of like doing a book report back in school. Find someone who's smart, who works hard. Hopefully they're really attractive. And I got 2 of the 3. 66 was as high as I ever got in school anyways. But in the past year or so, I had 3 life events that hit me fairly hard. And that is a call to action, as Dale said. There's the call to action personally, but also professionally. In my case, those 3 events were the end of a corporate career, which had drove me for years. The loss of a sister, which wounded me. And the realization that whatever comes next was really up to me, and that was inspiration. It inspired me. Each event presented a cause for reflection, as Dale said. So for tonight, I chose 3 reflection points in time, 10 years apart, during my most formative years from the age of 5 to 25, because yes, we're going to try to make these changes, but it won't be necessarily for us. It'll be for those who follow. Well, if you think about the 5 to 15 to the 25, those really your badge of honor years, and they are formative. For me, and in this case, my badge of honor is built around growing up in a family of 10 in a small farmhouse with wood heat only. I thought I'd throw that in because it's still winter out there, and a dirt floor basement, and then leaving to work across rural Saskatchewan for a decade on construction sites. Actually met Pat's father in the back of the wheat pool days. And we lived in antiquated camps. I recall that at age 5, I knew what my parents did. I knew I was expected to help. I knew my brothers and sisters were equal. And I knew that if I made an extra effort to go out of my comfort zone, I could get rewarded. And yes, people will toss nickels and dimes at you if you do the twist. But it was the ability to go outside of your comfort zone and just try. At age 15, I knew what responsibility was. There was no more sitting on the oven door waiting for someone to build a fire to warm up or eat. And you knew what consequences were. Being a victim really wasn't an option. By 25, I was ready for life. I was lucky in many ways to be forced into it early. I was well into life without grandparents. I just lost my parents, and I'd already experienced family and workplace fatality firsthand. I'd learned that life's losses and lessons and setbacks don't end, and they didn't. But my foundation at that stage was built. So if you fast forward 40 years, and from those life events comes inflection, first reflection and then inflection, as Dale said. And should I care? If so, how much? Why not just pull the blanket up? Why not just hide and stay warm like we did as kids? I own a lot of blankets. I could do that. Why not get creative like we did as youth and to get out of work? Isn't 50 years enough of work? Why not just blame someone else or lash out, such as the norm is today? Like, aren't we all busy? And why not just do what serves me? I mean, don't I deserve to be happy? So once again, in my particular case, luck was on my side. I got hired to do a report for Srita, and I'll never, ever lose my gratitude to Aaron for reaching out and entrusting me with that report. Srita is, for those who aren't aware, is the Saskatoon Region Economic Development Authority. But that led me to reconnecting with 2 guys who accepted me, guys who were inspired as hell and not going to take it anymore. Not angry, inspired. We'd meet and talk. And yes, it was at the back end of the report that I was doing. I get a hold of this guy, and he comes kind of hobbling in the door, just had his knees done, and we got fired up in no time. It was it's honestly It's fascinating. So we'd meet and talk, and I love talking about mega projects. You know, how could someone design the Pentagon over a weekend? It's true fact. Design the Pentagon over a weekend and build 4 million square feet of office space in 16 months with supply chain issues, with labor shortages. It was a wartime, in fact. So it wasn't just as simple as making things happen. Could we actually build a single railway across the province today? You know, there was over 6,700 kilometers that were built across just our province about 100 years ago, in less time than today's approval process. So imagine trying to get approvals for the rail, road, bridge, and power grid that we all take for granted. We've really done nothing that's, you know, the big projects, the transformational projects that Ellen's going to speak to. And, you know, and further, could we actually build the schools, churches, hospitals, or barns even without drama, without programs, without grants, on schedule and on budget? My school back home, 50 years old or so, torn down. The elevators that we worked on, gone. The railways, mostly gone. So it's time for that change. And can we sustain a planet that's grown? This will be a number that still gets me. When I was born, there's 2.9 billion people on the planet. Today, there's 8.3 billion. 2.9 billion, 8.3. So we think the human capital and the impact on the province is going to make a change. It is. It has, and it will. Daunting questions to be sure, but how about these? Dale, you got a couple of these, but if not, in terms of macro change, if not, why not? If not now, when? If not, where? Here, where? And if not us, who? Who's going to do this? So after being through most of Europe, and Lana and I just got back and seeing what's there, it's not just old, it's new. I see how much we can do. Much of it is for free. It's paper, it's policy. It doesn't take money. It just takes the will. So here we are, and I think our book is an easy read with a long shelf life and simple messages. Number one, we don't have to wait for someone else to solve our problems. Apologize for picking a US president, the last quotable one. But President Kennedy said, man's problems are man-made. Therefore, only man can solve those problems. In other words, we have the intellectual capacity. Two, we don't have to be the slowest country in North America and possibly most of the world, the advanced world, at approving permits. 34th out of 35, we consistently rank last. We don't have to do it all, but we need to do something. Competitors don't rest. Enemies don't wait. We need to think beyond our level of comfort for sure, because tinkering isn't doing it. Reinventing things must and will solve it. We have to stay positive, number 5, because whether you think you can or can't, you're right. So negative mindsets result in negative consequences. And the last one is never give up. It's always easier to tear things down, but I encourage anyone do not succumb to fear or fail to change. I hope you enjoy the book. Thank you for helping us launch this next step of the journey and your support going forward. Ellen?
I don't often have microphones lowered for me, but I am tonight, so it's okay. So, of the Fab Four, and I'm lumping you in the Fab Four here today, as you can tell, I am the youngest. And there was not supposed to be any laughing to that. That's all right. Thanks for coming out, and apologize for the half-hour delay. We had a little bit of a mismatch between the times, but glad to see you all here. Glad to see you haven't walked out, and so on. And I have the last word. I don't know how I got the last word, but I have the last word. I won't be as long as my partners here, but I do have kind of a parting message for you. My greatest hope for this book is that it doesn't end up on the fiction shelf in this great bookstore. It is hardcore nonfiction, and that's what it was meant to be. This is something you can pick up at any time, and that, we mentioned that it has a shelf life. I don't think this thing is going to be irrelevant in 6 months or a year. It's going to be relevant 5 to 10 years down the road here, and that's important. It will appeal to all people who care about Saskatchewan. And if you're from this province and if you lived here any length of time, every province in Canada is unique. We are unique as well. Saskatchewan has a very unique geography, a very unique fabric, and so on. And I'm a little concerned why am I with these three guys? I'm a little bit concerned about a lot of the trends that we've noticed in the last 2 to 3 years in particular. A lot of things aren't trending the right way. And that's unusual for Saskatchewan. We're people that are resourceful. We're people that are problem solvers. We roll up our sleeves and we get things done, and so on. That's the way this province was opened up. Every chapter of this book is not going to appeal to you. And you'll find the ones that will appeal to you, and you'll read through them. But we recognize not every topic is going to be to your liking. But there's one part of the book I hope everybody reads, and it's the introductory vision that was written in this book. It's about 6 or 7 pages. It describes Saskatchewan in the year 2040. And if there's one thing really missing about Saskatchewan right now, it's a vision of our province. It's a vision of our society going forward. I find that problems are coming at us very quickly. Trends are happening very quickly. Change is happening very, very quickly. So we're reacting all the time without any real sense of, okay, what are we reacting to? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? Like that old saying goes, if you don't have a plan, or if you don't have a chart or a path to go, any road will take you there, right? So what we want to do is we want to look optimistically and hopefully at Saskatchewan. So what I like about it is it's not a bunch of problems. We don't just describe the problems that Saskatchewan's facing. We have a vision that is very, very hopeful and very optimistic for our province. And it's sorely needed. We need a vision that extends beyond a budget cycle, for example. The other thing that's nice about the vision in the front of the book is it's achievable. We didn't want to do a pie in the sky piece, something that, we've read a lot about, this and that, and it's not really going to, probably come to fruition. We wanted things to come to fruition. So what sorts of things do we see? So I just wanted to go through a few of the things in the vision here. One of the things near and dear to my heart, and I've got 42 years of experience, both as a public servant and now in the private sector as a consultant for 9 years. And I've seen regulations with regards to development on both sides of the table. We need a brand new regulatory system for development in Saskatchewan, something made for the 21st century. If I look at most of you are probably not familiar with the Planning and Development Act, and I wouldn't expect you to be, and you don't have to be, there's no test or anything, but that is actually a fundamental piece of legislation that dictates how every piece of property is developed in the province of Saskatchewan. Very important document, right? It's antiquated. It's an antique. It was written for 1920, 1930, 1940, 1950. It was not written for the 21st century. And it doesn't need to be amended. It needs to be thrown out and rethought entirely from cover to cover. I have a good friend here who's a builder, and all he does every day in his career, he builds excellent housing, and he throws in affordable housing as well. And I just can't believe sometimes the difficulty he has doing that. And it's not getting less difficult with technology. It's getting more difficult, more complex, more time consuming, and more costly. You wonder why the cost of a house is high. I can point to several examples in that act that are raising the value of housing in Saskatchewan. That has to be changed. There's a disconnect between the public good and the regulation that we're being confronted with. And that's so we have solutions in the book that speak to that. I was driving home with another builder, And we were at a meeting in one of the municipalities in Saskatchewan, and on the way home, we drove together. He sort of, his shoulders slumped. He was driving, and he just sort of sighed and said, you know, in my next life, I'm not going to be a developer. And I thought that was sad because, you know, I felt really bad that he felt that way driving home. And all he does is build excellent housing and excellent neighborhoods. That's all he does. And so it just shouldn't be that way. So there's just one thing. A more efficient system of regional government. And here's a did you know fact. In Saskatchewan, we have 772 municipalities. Now just start to do some math in your head. 772 for 1.2 million people. And 2 of those municipalities house about half of that number. That is 22% of all the governments in Canada in Saskatchewan for 3% of the population. That is a structural and fundamental flaw that we have lived with for far too long. And I know that there's a SARM convention going on, and I wish I was, well, no, I don't wish I was standing in front of them saying this, because a lot of shotguns would suddenly go there like this, you know. But we have to wrestle with that, because if you're going to have any change at all, we have to have at least half that. You know, if we had half that, we'd be about this, as many as Manitoba has. Alberta has a little over 400, 772 folks. So that's another thing. A more efficient system of regional development is, and regional growth and regionalization is sorely necessary. So the other things we see do-it-yourself local economies, allowing private infrastructure where it makes sense. We're always confronted with it all has to be public, and what's happening is our public authorities, our public agencies, our cities, our provinces, in particular cities, are now starting to falter under the weight of the costs of managing and replacing infrastructure. I have a few notes for you just in a few minutes on that particular point. We see a rural renaissance. Not every municipality is going to survive the natural shift, you know, in population and so on that's occurring and has occurred for the last, you know, 60, 70 years in Saskatchewan. But we see nodes of excellence where it drives population growth and productivity, which we're all concerned about. We adapt to the ambitions of First Nations and facilitate each other's goals and objectives. Finally, without saying it, or saying it over and over again, we actually achieve that and start to integrate those two systems. And then the other vision we have here is a new system for municipalities to raise revenue and pay for the things we want and build, and less reliance on the regressive property taxes. And we've read about that. We've heard about that for a long time. You know, just in the last, I would say, the last 3 weeks, there have been a whole bunch of disturbing news stories about infrastructure. Calgary, you know, they've had a major water rupture affecting water for almost half of their city, and they're wrestling with that still right now. They've estimated that they need to spend $49 billion to correct and to maintain their aging infrastructure. 49 billion with a B. Edmonton is projecting a 40% tax increase just to manage their aging infrastructure. That's 4% a year for 10 years. That is where they would start with their budget, and then they would add on top of that cost of living increases, just inflation and other increases. So they're starting at 4% for 10 years. I don't know if you read in the one of the papers this past weekend. One story made my jaw just drop to the floor. The city of Kamloops in BC is borrowing $40 million until July to cover operating costs. $40 million for 6-7 months to cover operating. Now, that should never happen in a municipality, especially a municipality that's growing. Kamloops, I looked it up, it's growing at over 2% per year. Why would they need to borrow money to cover operating costs? So that's a real jaw dropper. That I did another calculation, that cost the city $560,000 in interest payments. And then the last one was right down the road, where Pat's going back to. 11% property tax increase was passed by council this past year. That's just to cover, cost of operating a city. Added to that was an 8% utility rate increase. So cities are really suffering under a lot of weight. And the weight is we're not paying enough for our infrastructure. It's going to fail. It's going to continue to fail. And we need a better way to pay for that infrastructure. So we talk about that in the book as well. And then finally, leadership, as Dale mentioned, on the climate crisis, we need structural changes to budgets that adapt and do our part to seriously address the problem. So has anyone here ever heard of Albert Einstein? Yeah, apparently he's a pretty smart guy, so, reportedly. And what he said was, quote, "We cannot solve problems with the kind of thinking we employed when we came up with them." He's absolutely right. We have to adjust our thinking. So the vision in the book starts things off. The rest of the book, and there's 9 chapters plus an appendix, and the 9 chapters just sort of feed into the vision. So if you buy into that kind of vision after you read it, you should be able to go to some chapters and see, well, what do these 3 characters think, that we should do to achieve that vision? It's achievable through hard work, a different attitude in Saskatchewan, new thinking. We got to stop fighting between the municipalities. I've seen that over and over and over again. That is something that is really tiring, is we're all fighting for scraps. This RM can't have that development. Or if we tax too much over here, they're going to move over there and that kind of thing. And it's a scarcity mentality. We have to have an abundance mentality and work through the problems and work more cooperatively. So keeping a goal in view and having a long view to get there. The book is nonpartisan. If you know a politician, or don't be afraid to hand it out to any of the political parties. We're hoping this appeals to everyone, not of any particular political stripe. And we hope this book finally will start a conversation, a discussion in our province. Long overdue, I think. I think it's time for government to set a vision for us, and it's time to come together as a society and think about how we want this province to look in 2040. And I'm not going to talk too much more. I'm losing my voice. So thanks very much.
Thanks, guys. I guess we have a few minutes here for questions, and we'll just grab a microphone. If someone's got some questions, we'll run it over, and you can ask, I guess, any of these 3 guys, or you can identify who you'd like to direct the question to. Or there may not be any questions. Here we go.
Dale, I'd like to go to your 3 Ps the way you presented them,
Sure.
productivity. And I have to subscribe to the same theory that we have a real issue with productivity in Canada. I guess my question for you is, what caused that? Why did we fall behind other G20 countries? And what do we have to do to solve that productivity problem? What are the implications?
Yeah. Oh, great question. This is my favorite part. I was hoping we'd get good questions, right? Because this part is called Nerds in Love. We love nerds. So these topics are great. I know we can't be here all night, but on the productivity side, you do know, I think some of you do know, that in the last 10 years, productivity defined as GDP per capita growth, we are the lowest of 44 OECD countries. The lowest, right? That's not very flattering. That's GDP per capita growth year over year. Why? Part of it is labor productivity. We brought in a lot of people, right? Productivity is a fraction, right? The numerator is economic activity. The per capita, the denominator is people. And we didn't keep up with our immigration strategies. We brought in lots of folks who are probably not on the skilled labor variety, temporary foreign workers, restaurant workers, stuff like that. We need everybody, but we didn't gear up and get prepared for that. So that's part of the answer, labor market productivity. Tech transfer, near and dear to your heart, Jerome, technology diffusion. And you came from that area. Jerome was once Director General for the National Research Council, was quite a stellar career, did some stuff, followed me in Innovation Saskatchewan. We haven't diffused out enough of what we need to do, and we're still struggling with that. Alex Fallon was here a while back. He's with AI Saskatchewan. We're still behind the curve, and we have to move and get moving. And we put R&D, like public infrastructure research in, and then it doesn't get pulled out, right? It stays there. And you've worked hard to pull out some of the stuff that you and I are working on, but that's another example. And just process productivity is not just innovation. It's process reform. It's doing things faster, better, cheaper, smarter, right? To quote Einstein. Where's my Einstein friend? So there they are. Yeah. And we haven't worked on process reform. You know, yes, our manufacturers have done some stuff on lean, but process reform happens everywhere. Project management, competitive intelligence. We list all of that stuff. Again, sorry, I'm going nerd on you now, aren't I? But this is an important one. We have a lot of figures in here, by the way. We have facts and figures, kind of like what you mentioned, Alan. Just to put a spin on Alan's, here's an interesting fact. How many municipalities in Saskatchewan per 100,000 people? Just to spin it a different way, right? 64. How many in British Columbia per 100,000 people? 3. Can SARM get this? Can we pipe this into the SARM? I mean, 7 in Alberta, right? These are alarming, right? This is Saskatchewan. Come on, guys. This is 2026. So I digressed. I just threw that in because I like what Alan said there. But tax, abundant investing for abundance, whatever else you guys we're quite interested in bringing out our nerd facts, figures, and comparators.
Starts with motivation, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's no impetus to change.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this, beyond the statistics, is the impetus to change. And we've been probably, as I think the analogy we've used before is kids living in the basement. You really don't have to grow up and do better because it's just there. So if 75% of our GDP or our economy is one neighbor, one client, you don't get creative, you don't get aggressive, and you don't find a reason to change.
Right. Exactly. That's very fair. Yeah. Greg.
Yeah, howdy, and congratulations to the three. It's a hell of a good read. I really enjoyed it. I think you're right. You guys have your collective wisdom, a lot to share to our province and community to start a discussion about a vision for 2040. So I wanted to throw to the three of you. You might have each a different answer, but if you were thinking about one asset that Saskatchewan has, when you compare us to other provinces, one asset that can actually realize that vision for 2040, what would that asset be that we have in Saskatchewan?
Wow. Well, there's many. I mean, we're the land of 100,000 lakes. We got fresh water. That's going to be the commodity the world needs. Forget oil. It's going to be water. We have a great history, a heritage of pioneers, settlers, and a great partnership potential with people who were here long before the settlers. But for me, arable land, right? Canada is the second biggest country in the world. Saskatchewan has, it depends on who calculates this, but between 41 and 44% of all arable land in Canada. Climate change is going to wipe out about 25% of the arable land on the planet by 2050. I swear to God. And I don't mean to be a doom scroller. Look at your models. Pakistan, gone. Egypt, gone. Many reasons. The Amazonia and the Argentine and all of that. Big trouble. Saskatchewan and in the models generally are going to be okay. We're farther north. In fact, we might even get more arable land by virtue of some of that. That's a huge thing for us to think about. We're going to get a lot of global migration, by the way. Can you imagine 25% of the world's arable land disappearing between now and 2050? You think we have immigration challenges, refugee challenges? We ain't seen nothing yet. But Saskatchewan is going to be where the world wants to be. Land, water, people, right? And so for me, arable land, food has always been where we've come from. We just have to get better, smarter, and value added. Always a struggle for value added. My whole life I've been struggling for value added in agriculture. But I mean, that to me, Greg, that's the quick one right away. Arable land.
Yeah. Yeah, we do have different answers, I'm guessing. Sure. It's a tie for me between potash and uranium. I think if you look at the story next door with our neighbors that are putting tariffs on, like the reality is we are feeding that country and that economy has been created because of what's here in Canada. So you can't go from 2.9 billion people when I was born, a little less when Dale was here and so on. And that's sort of
About 100,000.
yeah, I was around 100,000 grounds of schooling. you can't go from those numbers, 2.9 billion to 8.3. And when I started talking about this, there was 7.5 billion. So it's changing and fast. And anyone that's worked in the food industry, when it all boils down to the simple things in life, we have to eat. We have to survive, and that's food, shelter, and clothing. So it's potash, but I think uranium then is going to be the other solution to creating alternative sources of power and energy, because the climate is changing. We accept that.
Thanks for the question, Greg, and I knew you were going to bring a great question, and I thought it'd be a little tougher. But we have in this province resourceful people. We always have. Saskatchewan people invent things. We make things. I think that's for 1.2 million people, we should be able to move together. At least the majority of us should be able to move together. It's not like we're trying to move 30 million minds here. We got a small province population wise. We should be able to move together. But I was on the resourceful side of things. It floored me one day, sitting eating a sandwich, and I love pickles. I had jarred pickles on the table, and I, turning and looking at the label, and I saw product of India, and I thought, you've got to be kidding me! I'm in Saskatoon. This is like pickle central. Like everybody pickles in Saskatchewan, right? Why did that jar come from India, right? Why didn't it come from Saskatchewan? And that's the kind of thing. That's the kind of thinking I think we need is, let's eat our own pickles. Let's eat pickles from Saskatchewan here, and that's just a metaphor for a lot of things.
I think I got a new nickname for you. I'm going to start calling you Pickles.
Good evening, Danzig. I'm Scott Nagakio. Thank you for that presentation. Just a quick reminder, 2026 marks the 150th anniversary of Treaty 6. And just wondering what your personal thoughts are. I know Dale has dug into this a little bit in your networking with chiefs, leaders, academics, etc. Just your comments and thoughts on, I haven't read the book yet, but I hope there's some good information in regards to what we can do to accelerate First Nations economic development, from entrepreneurship to the large scale projects, because the number one killer right now in our backyard is poverty.
Yes.
Homelessness. I wouldn't say homelessness either, but they're houseless. How can you be homeless in your own land?
Yeah.
So maybe just getting back to the question around solutions, because
Yes.
we're often grappling with that at Srita as well.
Yeah. Well, Melt, you and I go back probably as far as almost anybody in this room. We go back a long way, and we have about 70 First Nations in this province, a little more, 72 maybe, 75. I've been in about 40 of them. You've probably been in more. The sad part is more of the people likely in the rest of this room, and I'm not trying to be critical, or more of the people in our business community have probably been to Italy or Greece or other parts of the world, other countries in the world, and their own First Nations right next door, right? That's a sad thing. And yet look at our kids, they're all there. How often do we get employers do talent attraction and vocational counseling on reserve, right? They're there. The labor pool is there. So that's part of it. It's a long game on that one. But why aren't we creating tourism, and we'll call it business tourism, to First Nations rather than to Europe or to South America or God knows where people like to go? Because our partners, our colleagues, our friends are right here. And of course, our economic development agencies within our Indigenous corps are working, they're growing. We had a long history of, frankly, not optimizing the arable land that First Nations had, right? They're renting it way too cheap. They're getting basically screwed, frankly, by a lot of our neighbors. You and I know that. I've worked hard, you've worked hard on proper land leases and crop share agreements to finally get their fair share back. That will help a little. But also we have had two solitudes. You talk about solitudes, right, Milt? You have towns in this city, towns in this province, and next door there may be 2, 3, 4 reserves, and they don't work, we don't work together. I like what Muskeg recently did. They signed a deal with Blaine Lake, and they're working on shared municipal infrastructure. Hallelujah, finally, right? I like what George Rathwell did several years ago, working with Chief Darcy Bear, rather than reinvent for a relatively small First Nations community, Dakota Whitecap, rather than reinvent an entirely different and struggle to find the right talent on the school system, partnered with the Saskatoon Public Schools, right? Let's breach those two solitudes. Like really, it's 2026 and still, I mean, I don't have to talk about city people not going to First Nation. Town people hardly even know their First Nation neighbors, and they're right there. You know, that's what I call authentic. In the spirit of the treaty, Milt, 2026, in the spirit of the treaty, that's authentic partnership, isn't it? Yeah. And the other thing, I mean, you talk about potash and uranium, and I'm gonna be quite controversial, but you and I, Milt, we fought the rent a feather phenomenon for years, right? Create a token company with maybe a 1% revenue off the top on sales and call that an Indigenous company or an Indigenous partner. That's red washing, right? We've heard of greenwashing, that's red washing. The ones we're really wanting to see are the ones that have true equity and really growing. You know, the Athabasca Basin development, the Kitsakis, those kind of guys. And we have to get past that. And then when we do supplier development, let's not red wash as well. Like really, guys, really Nutrien, really BHP, really. I know Cameco, I can say this. I think Cameco is doing a damn good. They're probably our Northern Development Ministry, Cameco, the Ministry of Northern Growth, right? But a lot of the others, I mean, tell us what you're really doing for supplier development. Tell us where you're really putting talent. We need to really maybe call it hold your feet to the fire. But we've got to get real. It is the history, the 100th anniversary of Treaty 6. And so, yeah, I mean, you and I, we can froth at the mouth on this stuff, right? We have done that almost. Well, froth over some beer anyway. But that is part of the answer. And I yeah, you can tell how we feel strongly about this. Yeah. And we talk about it in the book. Do you guys want to add to that? Okay.
I'll add to it. I haven't done as much work with nations as Dale, but I've done work with a few. And the last 20 years of commercial real estate, nobody cares who the client is. We're out there to make deals happen. The truth of the matter is there is awkwardness and I don't think it's anything to do with trust. I think it's awkwardness and how do we move forward on anything. And they still fall back on the fundamental thing about passion and desire that people will make change if they want to make change at some point. So I have seen a lot of ships passing in the night, I'll call it, Milt, where people don't have a good sense of what is happening, for example, with inside and all the different things that's happening behind the scenes. They just think it's over there. But it's also this view cuts both ways. And one of my colleagues from Regina, who's here, that worked with me on a large scale project, we had an interesting experience right off the bat where there was a judgment about, can I trust you on this project because you're an old WG, you're an old white guy. And because I grew up around, in the Nut Mountain, Kelvington area, my best friends on the farm were from Yellow Quill and Fishing Lake. So I'm like, if you got an axe to grind, take it up with the French and the English because I'm Polish. And it was kind of a joke, and the room got real quiet, and then we just kind of we moved forward from there. So setting down bias and setting down mistrust or misunderstanding, that's the first hurdle. And that will only happen with passion and desire. I can't say it any more transparently and bluntly than that. Is the solution in the book, though? I don't think it is. I think it's more mechanics on projects.
And just to, a quick thing to add to this that discussion is when I talked about the Planning and Development Act, it affected all land in Saskatchewan, everybody's land and so on. It's a British invention. The Planning and Development Act it comes from British heritage, British traditions. It's got a coat of arms right on the front cover. I think we need to do away with that and build a brand new planning and development for everyone. And if we're having, a lot of difficulty, everybody's having a lot of difficulty with it. And it just needs to be completely rethought from the ground up.
Here's a bit of trivia, speaking of invention. You know what's a British invention is patrimonial governance, right, Milt? The Nehewak people, the Soto, they were matrimonial. The women who really ran things, the women were the ones who were the governance bodies in all of the traditions. And in fact, when the treaties were signed, as you know, Milt, there's a great book called Outside the Women Cried. They weren't allowed to come in. And we lost this is for all the women in the audience, right? You want something done, give it to a woman. The governance starts often with the matrimonial leadership, and we lost that. The other thing you got me thinking, I want to add this, they all converge, all these things, but we're increasing defense spending to 5% of GDP, right? Well, guess who's got best advantage in all of Canada right now for that? But we haven't capitalized on it. Aaron, you and I are going to talk about this. Saskatoon, we have SIIT, the Aviation Mechanics Capital of Canada, SIIT, right? We have the IBRD offsets, which creates added procurement points for Indigenous partnership in defense builds, right? Let's get going. And I know some of our First Nation Indigenous corps are going there. We have Kalian, we have PAMI, who has developed a lot of military vehicles. So I talk about light a fire. We got to get cracking on our defense cluster, right? And I haven't heard it yet. Marlon, if you were still with me in the Ledge building, we work on it, right? That was Marlon and I were old colleagues in arms back in the day, and that's the kind of stuff I hope we can light a fire again on, Marlon, as well. And that's the win-win, right? We're working with our Indigenous partners as well. Vipin.
I'd just like to add one more thing to fertilizer and uranium is agriculture. We moved to Saskatchewan from BC and before Ontario, and Saskatchewan, more than 50 years ago, was the breadbasket country, right? But I'm of the science background. We've come a long way, but there have been impediments. There have been innovations, both in canola, Keith Downey from agriculture, developed this big canola, and it's the world over. We've gone into peas and lentils, and the world needs that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been traveling to China, India, and other countries. They need that. So where are the impediments in trying to get those to our population is minuscule relative to 8.3 billion we've got in the world. We've got to get that food out.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are the solutions?
Oh boy, when you say get stuff out, now you're into transportation. We talk about transportation infrastructure in the book. I mean, isn't it sad that we're having to ship potash through the ports in Washington State because we haven't fixed our own ports in Canada, in Vancouver, right? That's not good. Isn't it sad that we have had not the full-fledged development of our Indigenous rural lands like we just talked about a while back? But there's a lot of things that go on in not reaching our full potential, what we could. One of the big things I'm excited about, we all are, is the Port of Churchill, moving things out. You know, if you ship from Churchill to Asia, where you talked about, Vipin, where you come from, or you ship to Africa or India, it's a saving of 5 to 7 days compared to anything in Canada, compared to the St. Lawrence, compared to a lot of the European ports. Why haven't we developed Churchill? And by the way, Churchill is owned by the Arctic Gateway Group, which is a consortium of 44 First Nations, right? Indigenous and First Nations. It's right there for us, right? It's Saskatchewan's port. I mean, we have a port in Saskatchewan. It's called Churchill. It's that bloody close, right? So I think these are the things we talk about also in our vision, and also that'll unleash and unlock some of our agricultural stuff. And then when you back up, you got Saskatoon, which would be a perfect inland hub and gateway, which is something near and dear to Richard's heart, to then mobilize container traffic and multimodal, and then move it to the Port of Churchill. We could be the inland partner to Churchill. It's all there. The chessboard is clear to us. The pieces are on the board. We just have to start moving the pieces.
Yeah, the sense of urgency, my 2 cents on that, Vipin, is that there is this slow moving iceberg coming our way, and it's called congestion in the rail system. Because if you look at the growth in the rail car sector that, for example, Canpotex and Nutrien have added to their fleet, the largest privately held fleet in North America is here in Saskatchewan by Saskatchewan companies, and they're adding cars, okay? But what are we doing to the rail line? So my prediction will be you can all expect to hear more and more major issues like we just had on the east side of the city with highway jamming up, but we're gonna have the same thing with rail car traffic. Wait till BHP comes on board. How can you keep adding on to this? It's like being on Circle Drive North at 5 o'clock every day. That's where our rail network is, and we aren't adding to it. So I'd love to see, Mill, back to your question, let's build another rail line across Canada that's owned by a single entity and privatize that, as opposed to running a duopoly that has no motivation to get better. The land and the assets were given to those companies, and there's been no impetus to change and grow. And so it's a natural thing. If you go up in the sky and watch where stuff has to move. Again, back in my asset management days at the Wheat Pool, we were not going to build any more capacity in Vancouver for a bunch of reasons, because stuff just gets there and stops. So it's either Portland, Seattle, or Prince Rupert. And that's why that decision was made. It's risk mitigation. So there has to be a significant investment, not another little spur line, not a little siding, but something major, very quickly. Just can't wait. So that's part of the 2040.
Yeah.
Now, did you have something as well?
All right, guys, I kind of hate to break up the party, but especially when one of the reasons they wrote the book was for provoke discussion, which I think we've done tonight. I guess another reason though was to sell books. So if you want to buy a book after this, that's fine. We have some books up front here. These guys will chat some more with you and sign any copies. And I think they've got another engagement next door before too long. So thanks a lot, guys, for coming out and sharing your knowledge, and just join me in thanking these guys for their efforts.
Regarding next door, in case you hadn't heard, we have reserved the lounge at Oxy's, and it's a cash bar thing, unless you're